Mama, you are not behind. You are not late. You are not too old, too set in your ways, or too anything. You are new. And meeting yourself at this age with all the wisdom and the scars and the grace you have accumulated might just be the most freeing introduction of your life. Hey, Mama, sit down. I want to ask you something today, and I want you to actually sit with it before your brain rushes to answer it. If you weren't mom, if you weren't the one fixing, helping, checking in, holding everything together, managing the group chat, tracking everyone's appointments, and somehow still knowing where everybody left their keys, who would you be? Not who you used to be, not who everybody else needs you to be, not the role, not the title, not the function, but who are you right now, today? Because at 60 years old, I had to meet that woman for the very first time. And let me tell you, she was a lot more interesting than I expected. Welcome back to Mama Sit Down, the podcast where moms of adult children reclaim their lives one boundary at a time. This is part 2 of our series, She's Not Lost, She's New. And today we are talking about meeting yourself at your age. So let's go. Now, if you were with us last week for part 1, you heard me get really honest about the running away, the car, the breaking point, and the moment I finally understood that I had spent my entire life being needed without ever stopping long enough to ask what I actually needed. And here's what I didn't fully say last week. In all of those moments, I wasn't falling apart. I was being introduced to myself. I just didn't know it yet. This part of today's episode, I'm calling Find. This is where we reflect. And for a lot of us, that word alone is enough to make us want to go reorganize a kitchen drawer. Because reflection means stillness, and stillness means sitting with yourself. And sitting with yourself when you have spent your whole life being needed by everyone else is genuinely uncomfortable. I was not just a mom who got a little too involved with her kids' lives. I was a caregiver before I was ever old enough to drive. I was reading the room, keeping the peace, making sure everyone else was okay before I even understood that that was not my job. So when my kids grew up and stopped needing me in the same way, I did not feel released. I did not feel free. I felt unnecessary. And unnecessary when being needed has been your entire identity feels a lot like invisible, and invisible feels a lot like worthless. But here's the truth I need you to hear, and I need you to hear it clearly. That feeling does not mean your life is over. It means your role has changed. And nobody, not one person, not one book, not one well-meaning friend really prepared us for that part. They prepared us for the babies. They prepared us for the toddlers and the teenagers and the college drop-offs and the weddings. But no one really prepared us for the quiet. So here we are in the quiet, figuring it out together. And the first step is simply this: finding out who you actually are right now. Not who you were at 25, not who everyone else has needed you to be, but who you are today, with everything you have lived, everything you've survived and carried. That is where we start. Now, here is where it gets real because I'm not going to let us skip this next part. We can reflect all day long. We can journal and pray and listen to podcasts and nod along. But if we do not deal with what is underneath all of it, we stay stuck. And I did not start this podcast so we could stay stuck together. This next part is called the forgive part. And I want to say something that might land a little heavy today, so just breathe with me for a second. You may need to forgive the people who benefited from your overgiving without ever asking if you were okay. You may need to forgive a culture, a church, a family system, or a set of expectations that told you your worth was measured in how much you sacrificed, that told you a good mother pours herself out completely and calls it love. And yes, you may need to forgive yourself. Now, let me tell you something about this part that I was not prepared for, because I thought the hard work was realizing I'd been over responsible all those years. I thought once I saw it, the healing would just follow naturally. What actually happened was the opposite. When I finally understood that my over-involvement, all that fixing and carrying and managing, had actually been holding my kids back, I did not feel relieved. I felt devastated. And I did what I'd always done with hard feelings. I turned them inward. I started beating myself up. Here I was, trying to heal from a lifetime of carrying too much, and I picked up a brand new load to carry. The load of everything I had done wrong. All those years I thought I was helping, all those moments I stepped in when I should have stepped back, all those times I loved them in the wrong direction. I beat myself up all over again. And one day, in a quiet moment that felt very much like God pulling up a chair next to me, I heard something that stopped me cold. Roxanne, you cannot be held responsible for what you did not know. And I just sat with that because it was so simple and I had never once applied it to myself. I did not know. I genuinely didn't know that I was doing what I'd been taught, what I had survived on, what had felt like love for my entire life. I was not trying to harm anyone. I was trying to hold everyone together with everything I had. Forgiving yourself is not excusing the behavior, it's releasing the verdict. It is saying, I did not know then what I know now. And now that I know better, I'm choosing to do better. And that is enough. That has to be enough. Because here's the truth. You cannot build a new life on a foundation of self-punishment. You just can't. The same grace you've poured out on your children for decades through every mistake, every failure, every wrong turn they ever took, that grace was always available to you too. You just forgot to turn it inward. Because this forgiveness we're talking about, it is not just a self-help concept. It is a biblical truth. Ephesians 4:31 through 32 says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ God forgave you. Now, most of us read that verse and think about forgiving other people. And yes, that is part of it. But I want you to notice it says forgiving each other. That includes you forgiving yourself, friend. Same grace you extend to everyone else in your life, you're allowed to extend it to yourself too. God forgave you fully, completely, without a list of conditions. That means the years you spent overgiving out of fear, the years you lost yourself in someone else's story, the years you believed your worth was tied to what you could do for other people, those years are covered. They are not a life sentence. They are a starting point. So if you're carrying guilt today about who you've been or how long it took you to get here, I want you to set it down. Set it down right here in this episode. You do not need to carry that into the next chapter. Now, here's something else I want to name before we move on. Because somewhere along the way, we were handed this message and we swallowed it whole. The message that said, if your children are not your entire world, if you have needs of your own, if you want something for yourself, then you must not love them enough. And Mama, that is simply not true. You can love your children with absolutely everything you have and still have a life of your own. Those two things are not in conflict. In fact, one actually makes the other better. And that brings us to the part that I love the most, the free. This is where it starts to get good, I promise. Freedom does not arrive all at once. I want to be honest with you about that because I think we sometimes expect a dramatic transformation, some big moment where we wake up and suddenly know exactly who we are and exactly what we want, and everything just clicks into place. That has not been my experience, and I suspect it will not be yours either. Freedom comes in little moments, little choices, little discoveries. It looks like trying something new and being absolutely terrible at it and doing it anyway. It looks like saying no to something and not spending the next 4 hours composing an explanation in your head for why you said no. It looks like sitting in a coffee shop by yourself and actually enjoying it instead of feeling guilty that you are not somewhere being useful to someone. It looks like asking yourself what you want for dinner instead of automatically thinking about what everyone else wants. It looks like small, quiet, beautiful moments of just being you. And yes, it feels weird at first. I will not pretend it doesn't. When you've been in motion your entire life, stillness feels suspicious. When you've been needed by everyone, existing for yourself feels almost selfish. But here's what I've learned. That strangeness fades, and what replaces it is something I did not have a word for until recently. Peace. Not the peace that comes from fixing everything, not the peace that comes from everyone being okay, but the deep, settled, God-given peace that comes from finally being at home in yourself. And that changes how you show up for everyone else too. Because when you stop showing up from guilt, when you stop over functioning to prove your love, when you stop needing to be needed in order to feel worthy, you start showing up from something so much healthier. Your adult children do not need a mom who has lost herself to prove she loves them. They need a mom who is whole. And becoming whole, meeting yourself, forgiving yourself, freeing yourself, that is not selfish. That is the most loving thing you can do for everyone in your life, starting with yourself. Now, before I give you this week's reflection prompt, I want to check in with those of you who were here last week. Last week, I asked you to sit with one question. What have I always been curious about, but never given myself permission to explore? How did that go? Did anything surface? Did something unexpected bubble up when you finally gave yourself permission to just wonder? If something came up for you, I want you to take it one step further this week. Whatever that curiosity was, no matter how small or silly or impractical it felt, I want you to take one tiny action toward it this week. Not a commitment, not a plan, just a small step in its direction. Buy the book, look up the class, drive past that place. Just one small move that says to yourself, you matter enough for me to take this seriously. And for those of you joining us for the first time today, welcome. Pull up a chair. Here is your starting point. This week, I want you to sit with this question. What do I enjoy when I'm not trying to be useful to someone else? Not productive, not helpful, not needed, just you. Just what makes you come alive for no reason other than it makes you come alive. Write it down if you can. Do not judge whatever comes up. Do not turn it into a goal or a plan or a 5-year strategy. Just let yourself wonder. That wondering is the beginning of everything. And one more thing before I let you go today. Remember this. There is no expiration date on purpose. God did not bring you through everything you've survived, all the instability, all the years of carrying, all the times you held it together when everything around you was falling apart, just to leave you without an identity in this season. He is not taking something from you when your kids stop needing you the way they used to. He's revealing something in you, something he put there before you were anybody's mama, before you were anybody's fixer. Something that has been quietly waiting all this time, waiting for you to finally have the space to see it. That is not loss, friend. That is invitation. Mama, you are not behind. You are not late. You are not too old, too set in your ways, or too anything. You are new. And meeting yourself at this age with all the wisdom and the scars and the grace you have accumulated might just be the most freeing introduction of your life. So sit down with yourself this week. Get a little curious. Extend yourself the same grace you've given everyone else for decades. And remember, you are allowed to become someone you have never been before. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today. If this episode hit home for you, share it with a mama who is standing at the edge of this same discovery and just needs someone to tell her it is safe to step forward. Subscribe where you are listening so you don't miss part 3, the final episode of She's Not Lost, She's New. We're calling it She's Becoming, and it's going to bring this whole series home in a way I think is going to stay with you. Until then, be still, be curious, be kind to yourself. Because remember, it's your time now.